Greetings, traveller. Here in the silence of this library, I uncover the most fascinating stories that have long been forgotten. Stay a while and listen, and I shall take you on a journey that has endured for centuries. Stories from Middle-earth, the call of shadows. Rain drizzled from the darkened sky, and the horizon disappeared into the misty expanse of the misty mountains. In the grey light of the setting sun, the young Dúnedain, Beleg, wandered alone, raindrops stabbing his face like icy needles. His horse moved restlessly, as if sensing the danger hidden among the mountain peaks and ravines through which their path led. As they drew closer to the ruins of Carn Dûm, Beleg's heart began to race. A mixture of excitement and growing dread reminded him of the warnings he had heard from elder rangers in Rivendell. Dark powers are stirring in these mountains, one of the eldest members of their order had once told him. Carn Dûm was the seat of wicked spirits and Angmar's lord, who drew his strength from the very heart of darkness. Do not seek answers there, Beleg. You will find only death in those ruins. But Beleg had ignored the elder's advice. He was no longer a boy. With each mission, he felt more confident, and the notion of fear seemed dulled by the pride swelling in his heart. The reason for his journey to Carn Dûm was not easy to explain. His dreams had become troubling, haunted by visions of shadows and distant whispering voices. In his sleep, he saw figures with blurred faces beckoning him toward them. Come and find what has long been lost, they said, their voices chilling him with their alien, otherworldly echo. Reaching a ridge overlooking the ruins of Carn Dûm, Beleg stopped to take in the view. The former capital of Angmar was but a shadow of its former power, covered in snow and moss that resembled dark stains on the skeletal remains of its stone walls. The place looked like a graveyard of ancient grandeur and, at the same time, a refuge for those who had never known peace. Slowly, he dismounted his horse, which snorted nervously, feeling an intense unease. Seeing the animal refuse to go any further, Beleg decided to leave it at the entrance, tying its reins to an old tree. He resolved to face Carn Dûm alone and uncover what was drawing him here with such force. As he crossed the gate, he felt the cold filling the air around him, the wind growing stronger, as if the very place had come alive at his presence. He took a few steps, the echo of his boots bouncing off the stone walls, creating the illusion that he was not alone. Everything seemed blurred, as though reality and shadow were intertwined in an impenetrable web. In the depths of the ruins, he spotted a hall that might once have been a throne room, now abandoned and ravaged by time. At its center stood a tall altar covered in moss and black runes etched into its surface. Beleg stepped closer, feeling a strange urge to touch the stone. When his fingers brushed the altar, a sudden pain surged through him, like an icy flame coursing through his body, piercing him from head to toe. For a brief moment, he had a vision. His eyes clouded, and before him appeared scenes of an ancient battle. He saw countless ranks of dead warriors, clad in malevolent armor and wielding swords, whose blades still gleamed with the red stain of blood. Above them circled dark shadows, evil spirits, undead beings that seemed to exist in eternal torment. The entire Carn Dûm was filled with wails and whispers, and among them, Beleg clearly heard one word, repeated again and again. Curse. 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 The vision vanished as abruptly as it had appeared, and Beleg exhaled heavily, leaning against the stone altar. His body was drenched and frozen, as though the cold of the ruins had seeped into his very being. He felt his heart pounding faster, his mind beginning to cloud with fear. Convinced that the curse of Carn Dûm was more than just a legend, he looked down at his hands and saw his skin starting to grey. with dark veins emerging beneath the surface, as though a malevolent force had taken root within him. With effort, he pulled himself away from the altar and moved deeper into the labyrinth of ruins. Each step grew heavier, his legs seemingly reluctant to obey. Around him, he began to notice movement, shadows slipping between columns and walls. At times, he thought he heard faint voices, like the whispers of the dead. "You have gone too far. You have found what you should not have sought." From deep within the ruins, he heard the sound of something stirring. The sharp crack of shattered stone broke the silence, and the echo reverberated through the walls. Suddenly, he realized that the shadows were not mere illusions. They were closing in on him, flitting through the half-light, as though the ruins themselves had come alive. In the dim glow of a weak fire barely illuminating the darkness, he glimpsed a figure, a tall shadow with hollow eye sockets, their black depths seeming to pierce his soul. With a strangled cry, he drew his sword and began to retreat, but the dark shadow followed, gliding silently above the ground. Beleg felt his strength draining from him, his sword trembling in his grip. Each step felt as though the ground beneath him was dragging him down, eager to swallow him whole. He heard a whisper resonating in his mind, filled with pain and suffering. "You are one of us. You are ours, Dúnedain." The words seemed to penetrate his soul, filling every corner of his mind. With horror, he realized this was no ordinary voice. It was the voice of the curse, ensnaring him like a spider's web. Beleg broke into a desperate run, his breath quickening, his body numb. At last, he reached the exit, but as he turned back, he saw that the shadows still surrounded him. Every stone, every fragment of the ruins seemed alive with a dark presence that now drew him back. He could not escape. He was a prisoner of Carn Dûm's curse. When Beleg shook off the terrifying vision, a fleeting moment of false calm was quickly overshadowed by a suffocating weight of impending darkness. The air around him seemed to thicken, and shadows grew into sentient creatures watching him from the deepest recesses of the ruins. Carn Dûm felt like a labyrinth. Once entered, he realized escape was impossible. The space around him seemed to shift, severing any path back to safety. Doubt crept into his soul, but the desire to uncover the secrets of this place, coupled with the inner voice beckoning him, left him no choice but to press on. As he neared the main hall, his steps became heavier, as though each stone bore the memory of a dark past. The air was damp, carrying the metallic scent of long-dried blood, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to remember every life that had ended there. At last, he reached the massive throne room, the heart of Carn Dûm, where the Witch King of Angmar once ruled. The throne was gone, but the room still bore the weight of its history. At the center stood an altar etched with ancient runes, a grim testament to the dark rituals performed in this place. Approaching the altar, Beleg heard a whisper, soft, barely discernible yet constant. The words were dark, spoken in a language he did not know, yet they seemed to strike at the core of his soul. Each syllable carried pain and torment, resonating with an anguish that defied comprehension. Instinctively, Beleg stepped back, but an invisible force rooted him in place. His hands trembled, and he found himself unable to move. It was then that the first spirit appeared, a faint, featureless figure, pale and devoid of clear form, its face a mere shadow of its former life. Its dark, hollow eyes locked onto Beleg, piercing him with a gaze that conveyed both recognition and despair. Beleg felt his heart freeze, cold sweat soaking his skin. The spirit drifted closer, with a silence that made its presence even more unnerving. "Who are you, mortal, to disturb the rest of our death?" The voice echoed within Beleg's mind, resonant yet filled with anguish and dark power. Beleg tried to respond, but no words came. His throat constricted, and his voice was stolen by the weight of fear. The spirit extended a translucent hand, reaching for his shoulder. When its icy fingers brushed his skin, a sharp pain coursed through him, as though his very essence was being corrupted. He watched in horror as a black vein emerged on his arm, creeping upward like a venomous serpent. "You are marked!" the voice declared, laden with foreboding. The spirit vanished, leaving Beleg to collapse onto his knees, clutching his arm. He felt his body trembling violently, his mind flooding with chaotic visions. He saw a battlefield of old, warriors screaming, burning armor clashing, swords dripping with blood. The forces of Angmar surged forward, crushing the final defenders of the north. The ground was soaked with the cries of the dying. Struggling to his feet, Beleg saw more than just memories. He felt himself being drawn into the history of this cursed land. Each step forward became heavier, as though the ruins themselves sought to claim him. Shadows whispered names into his ears, of children hiding in caves, of elders pleading for mercy, of warriors who met their end under Angmar's unrelenting assault. And then he saw him. The vision coalesced into a towering figure clad in spiked black armor. A hood obscured his face, but his eyes blazed with a cold, unyielding fire. Beleg knew him instantly, the Witch King of Angmar, the legend whose power and malice haunted the tales of the north. The Witch King raised a sword, its edge gleaming with an unnatural darkness, and pointed it at Beleg. "You came here ignorant of your fate." The voice was chilling, devoid of mercy. "You have become one with this land, one with the darkness. The curse is now your inheritance, and I am its keeper." Beleg wanted to cry out in defiance, but no sound escaped his lips. The Witch King vanished, and the visions receded like a tide, leaving him alone once more. But he knew he was no longer the same. Looking at his hands, he saw his skin had turned pale, almost translucent, and the dark veins continued to crawl along his flesh as if claiming him inch by inch. He knew he had to escape, yet every attempt to move was hindered. The ground beneath him seemed to grip his legs, pulling him deeper into the ruins' malevolent grasp. The realization struck him: he could not leave. He was now a prisoner of Carn Dûm, much like the restless spirits who had shown him the truth. Summoning the last vestiges of his strength, Beleg forced himself to move, each step a battle against the ruins themselves. His mind was haunted by whispers, the names of the dead, the voices of children, elders and warriors alike. Carn Dûm had become their home, and they would never let him forget it. Finally, he reached the edge of the ruins, where a pool of still, dark water reflected his image. For a moment, he did not see himself alone. The shadows of countless lost souls stared back at him, their empty eyes now his companions. Beleg felt the weight of their curse settling on him, binding him to Carn Dûm. He was no longer a mere wanderer. He had become part of the darkness he had sought to uncover. Beleg struggled to shake off the sense of defeat that had taken hold of his soul. His heart raced, and his senses were taut as a bowstring. As he ventured deeper into the ruins, he felt an intangible yet powerful presence, an awareness within the darkness that seemed to watch his every move. Each step became an ordeal, and every shadow appeared to morph into unsettling shapes, blurring the line between reality and illusion. As he traversed the corridors, he noticed runic symbols carved into the walls, marks left by long-forgotten hands. The sight of them filled him with unease, yet also an irresistible curiosity. They seemed to whisper promises of secrets and power, but Beleg knew these inscriptions were imbued with the dark magic that bound Carn Dûm in its grasp. Stopping before one particularly vivid rune that glowed faintly in the darkness, Beleg reached out to touch it. As his fingers brushed the cold stone, a searing pain coursed through his body, like 1,000 icy shards piercing his skin. He tried to pull away, but found himself tethered, as though the magic had ensnared him. Suddenly, an apparition appeared. A woman's ethereal form, her silhouette flickering like a fading flame. Her face was marred by anguish and torment, her eyes filled with betrayal and fury. Her voice, soft yet chilling, echoed through the corridor like a cold winter wind. You, who tread here with a pure heart, cannot fathom the treachery that festers in the shadows. Betrayal always returns, as a river to its source, the ghost intoned, her words piercing Beleg's soul like a dagger. Beleg felt an inexplicable familiarity with the apparition, though he had never seen her before. He sensed that she was more than a mere remnant of the past. She was a victim of a bloody betrayal, a shadow of vengeance that now haunted these ruins. Her name surfaced in his mind as if whispered by the darkness itself. Gwaelith, a warrior betrayed by her comrades and condemned to eternal damnation within Carn Dûm's walls. Recognizing her plight, Beleg extended his hand toward her, but the ghost recoiled, her form shimmering with anguish. She gazed at him with lifeless eyes and spoke words that seared into his mind. "You are not here by chance, Beleg of the North. You are chosen, cursed as we all are." Her pronouncement sent a chill down Beleg's spine. He felt the curse tightening its grip on him, dragging him deeper into Carn Dûm's abyss. He realized this was no ordinary ruin. It was a trap, a labyrinth where all who entered became ensnared. With every passing moment, he felt his thoughts intertwining with Carn Dûm's dark history, as though his soul was being drawn into its forbidden realm. Determined to press on, Beleg rose to his feet, his resolve warring with the dread gnawing at his heart. As he ventured further, a fresh bloodstain appeared on the corridor floor, a stark, crimson trail that stood out against the desolate gloom. He followed it, the trail leading him into an even darker and more foreboding part of the fortress. At the end of the corridor, he encountered a massive door etched with a sinister rune resembling a serpent coiled around a cross. The symbol exuded an aura of ancient sorcery, the dark handiwork of Angmar's sorcerers. Beleg hesitated before pushing the heavy door open, revealing a chamber lined with walls inscribed with cryptic, otherworldly markings. In the center of the room stood a stone table, upon which lay a skeletal figure. The sight filled Beleg with unease, yet he was inexplicably drawn to it. The skeleton bore the marks of ancient wounds and fractured bones, suggesting a violent death. Who had brought this body here, and why? A voice broke the oppressive silence, deep, sorrowful, yet tinged with malice. "This is my eternal resting place, mortal. Have you come to release me from it?" Beleg tread cautiously, sensing the weight of the spirit's anguish and rage. "I seek the truth," he whispered, his voice trembling but resolute. "I mean no harm." "The truth," the voice sneered, filled with bitter irony. "The truth is that we are all prisoners of treachery here." The air resonated with the sound of shattering glass, though no visible object broke. Beleg froze as the skeleton on the table began to stir, animated by an unseen force. Its hollow sockets emitted a cold blue glow, and its brittle bones creaked as they moved with unnatural purpose. Beleg instinctively stepped back, but found himself paralyzed, trapped by an overwhelming fear. The voice grew louder, more commanding. "Those who enter Carn Dûm become part of its darkness. There is no escape." In that moment, Beleg understood the true nature of this cursed place. Carn Dûm was no mere ruin. It was a prison for the betrayed and forgotten, their souls eternally bound to its walls. And now, it sought to claim him as well. He felt the shadows closing in, their cold grip tightening around his heart and soul. The curse was not merely an affliction, it was a destiny, an inexorable tide pulling him deeper into the abyss. Fighting against the darkness, Beleg summoned every ounce of his will, determined not to succumb. Yet, deep within, he sensed the futility of his struggle. The curse was like a relentless river, consuming all who dared to stand in its path. As he turned to leave, his steps faltered, weighed down by the knowledge that he was no longer the man who had entered Carn Dûm. The fortress had marked him, its shadow entwined with his very being. The ruins whispered to him still, voices of the damned calling his name, binding him ever closer to their fate. Beleg, staggering on his feet, felt himself increasingly succumbing to the influence of Carn Dûm. The fortress, like a living entity, ensnared him in invisible bonds, forcing him to confront the inevitability of his fate. Every fiber of his being fought against the growing sense of losing his identity, as if the dark magic of Angmar sought to erase him from the world of the living and bind him to the circle of the damned. Suddenly, he noticed a figure standing at the end of a long corridor. This was no ghost or apparition. The warrior had a body, a tangible presence, though his silhouette seemed cloaked in a shadow that filled him from within. The man raised his head, and his eyes glowed with a sinister light. He resembled a former general of Angmar, one of those who had sown terror in the hearts of their enemies for centuries before his soul had come to rest here in the heart of Carn Dûm. "Beleg of the North," the man spoke, his voice resembling the howl of a wolf beneath a full moon. "You have come for something that does not belong to you. Do you truly believe you can leave this place the way you entered?" Beleg tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword, knowing he faced a confrontation that might cost him his life or his soul. "I have come neither for glory nor treasure. I came to see the truth about you and these walls. Who are you to cast shadows over the hearts of those who dare enter this cursed stronghold?" The warrior laughed coldly, his laughter echoing off the walls. "I am what remains of Angmar's greatness. I was the sword in the hand of the Witch King, his right hand, and like him, I will not rest until I fill the soul of every intruder with the black essence of our power." Beleg felt the air around them grow heavy, as if something invisible sought to crush him. The warrior raised a hand, and his shadow loomed behind him, taking the shape of an enormous, ominous figure whose eyes burned with a fiery hatred. "I see your pride drives you to face me. How reckless." The man drew a long sword, its blade seeming to devour the light around it. "Now, feel the wrath of Carn Dûm." Beleg instinctively leapt forward, his sword extended before him. His blade struck the warriors with such force that pain shot through his arm to the elbow. He felt his will weakening, as though something were draining his life force with each clash. Yet he did not yield. He knew he had to fight to break Carn Dûm's curse and escape with his life. Each clash, every swing of the sword, felt like a battle against the very essence of darkness. The warrior fought with terrifying skill, and with every movement he seemed to siphon away the last remnants of Beleg's hope, drawing him deeper into a vortex of despair. The dark warrior seemed to anticipate his every move, as though the very shadow of Carn Dûm whispered his next actions. Beleg felt his strength waning, when suddenly the spirit of the woman he had seen earlier appeared beside him. Her eyes glowed as if reminding him of the purpose of his journey, of his desire to uncover the truth, not to lose himself in an eternal struggle. Her voice was soft but firm. "Do not give in, Beleg. True strength comes from within, not from the sword. Your fate is not yet sealed." Hearing these words, Beleg felt courage well up within him once more. In one fluid motion, he leapt away from the dark warrior and focused on his inner strength, on the memories of the past that had always given him power. He realized he could not defeat the warrior through physical might alone. He had to break the curse of dark magic. He pointed his sword at the warrior and, instead of attacking, spoke. "You will not imprison me in your despair. This place may remain in darkness, but I do not belong to it. I am not your victim." These words, spoken with full conviction, had a strange and terrifying effect. The warrior froze, and his shadow began to dissipate, as though he were losing control of his own form. He screamed, but it was no longer a cry of confidence. His voice was filled with fear. "No, this cannot be. You are only a mortal." A desperate scream escaped his lips as his figure began to dissolve into the darkness. Beleg took a deep breath, feeling the power of Carn Dûm weaken, as though the entire fortress was retreating, leaving him alone. Before him, the spirit of Gwylith appeared briefly, her form now bright and serene. She smiled, her eyes seeming to say, "Thank you," for freeing her soul from eternal torment. "Carn Dûm may be cursed, but your heart has remained pure. Remember me and the others who have suffered here," she whispered, before vanishing completely, leaving him alone. Beleg stood for a moment longer, gazing at the empty space where she had disappeared. Finally, he turned and began his journey toward the exit, knowing Carn Dûm had left its mark on him, but that his soul had remained untouched. He knew this place would continue to tempt those seeking power and knowledge, but he would return north, to his home, free from the shadows cast by this dark fortress. The story has come to an end. Our hearth still burns. Stay, warm yourself, and let sleep take you as the world drifts into silence.